Okay, so a little bit about, Belinda's gonna tell us what we did last week.
Yeah. So last week we had a super fun show with some great personalities, and we talked about being social and how this is one of the ways that we're social now. So hopefully if you're in New York, you've gotten to taste the canned cocktails social hour from Julie Rayner and Tom Macy. We also did a little gazpacho action. Sarah Floyd put us together a really great gazpacho recipe. And then this was all of us trying to learn the virtual boozy brunch TikTok dance. And we're gonna share the rest of that choreography. And Henry and Ida, I really feel like it's gonna be you two that are gonna master that choreography first and be the stars of our video, which is my goal, to put together a virtual boozy brunch TikTok dance with a lot of us dancing to it. So it might take a little more practice than 7 minutes, we'll see. But we're gonna also talk about our theme for today. I know, Megan, you've been looking at the chats and seeing what everybody thinks about the word fresh. This is what I think about the word fresh.
You guys have some really good ones. So I know personally for me, I always think of like bright, citrus, fruity things. You guys have some good ones, lemons. I'm seeing clean, everything that's clean is fresh. What else do we got? Mark has no pants. I love it. So I'm actually excited about this week's theme because, you know, we have people here from all over. A lot of you guys are in really nice, warm climates, but here in Chicago, it's starting to get a little bit chilly. We're getting into the autumn season. Definitely is actually over here because we're going to make some like apple donuts later because that's the time of year it is, right? It's warm apples, cinnamon. We're starting to get into like stews and root vegetables. But at the same time, things that are fresh, light, bright, I think are really good for the soul. And you always got to have balance, right? So I always think like healthy, whole foods, bright ingredients, things that warm you up from the inside out and are bright, fruity, and happy. So if those things appeal to you, I think you're going to like this week's episode. Belinda's going to tell us a little bit about this week's lineup.
So we've all been squeezing lime juice all morning because, you know, fresh squeezed really makes that margarita. So get ready to make 2 tequila cocktails. And then we're doing queso fresco tacos, and Carrie Levins and Chef Jared are up in Upper New York State, and they're going to be roasting some vegetables with us, which you can do over an open flame or in a super hot cast iron pan, which maybe I'm going to start heating mine right now so it's super sizzling hot by the time my peppers hit that pan. And then we're going to do something that I think is super fun. We're going to objectively taste, kind of like we blind taste wines, if that's something you like to do, olive oils. So some people have a kit from Corto, and if you don't have that, you can grab any olive oils that you have in your cabinet, and we're going to learn how to tell about the fake olive oils. Apparently 70% of the olive oils we have here in the US are not as good as they say they are, and learn how to find those in the crowd. So I think that's going to be really fun, and we're all going to learn something. I certainly did from Lisa Pollack, who's going to be our last segment for today. So without any further ado, I think we have a fun song about tequila, don't we, Nika? Just to get us in the mood for these cocktails. I think you have to put your volume up because we can't hear it. Can I hear it? Well, we tried. Anyway,
I'm talking with Mika right now.
All right, this sounds not great. So we're gonna cut that, and we're gonna toss it over to Megan, and she will introduce our brand global national super fantastico next.
I like that introduction. That was a really good introduction. So you guys know here at Virtual Boozy Brunch, we always like to start with a drink, you know, get everything a little boozy before we get into our cooking. So starting off today, we have Jaime Salas. He is our tequila expert. He's the national ambassador for Milagro Tequila, which I'm really excited to crack into. He's a connoisseur and an advocate for tequila, which I think all of us can really appreciate, advocating for good things. He is involved in the U.S. Bartenders Guild. He's completed many certifications. So, I mean, I think he's pretty much got the best job ever, right? Like certified tequila expert and taster. He's been featured with his expertise all over the country. Cosmo, In Style. And so he's coming to us from Brooklyn in an apartment with apparently more than 300 bottles of tequila in tow. So really looking forward to see what he's going to teach us about. All right, take it away.
Megan, thank you very much. Hey, everybody out there. Nothing like, we can't have a boozy brunch without a cocktail in hand, right? So we're going to start there. Thank you very much for the kind introduction. Yeah, I have a lot of tequila bottles over to my left, and they've since moved downstairs to my basement because, well, you can imagine they were pushing me out of my apartment. If you know anything about East Coast apartments, they're pretty small. So I want to talk a little bit about Milagro. Why Milagro? Well, first and foremost, we pride ourselves in having that fine intersection between, respecting all those tried and true traditional methods of making tequila combined with today's palate and some innovations that we ourselves have created. So right now you're just looking at me, but in a mid-second, I'm going to pan down so you can see me make the cocktail. You can see me in terms of the bottles, what we have in hand. Can you guys see that? Perfect. All right, so, again, small apartment, so I couldn't go pan too far out with the camera, but here you have it. You have our Milagro Silver here. We have a Reposado and an Añejo. However, we will just be employing the Silver today in what I love to call the freshest margarita. This is a riff. I perhaps pushed it down too soon. This is a riff on what we call a modern classic. Essentially, it's been recognized the world over and is on cocktail menus all over the world, from Italy down to, parts in South Africa, Latin America, of course, here in the US. It was invented back in San Francisco. It is called Tommy's Margarita. It is essentially tequila, agave nectar, and fresh pressed lime juice. As Belinda mentioned earlier, fresh press is best. The premise being is that it's a three-part ingredient, but the most important part, perhaps, aside from the tequila, obviously, is the lime juice, because it's going to give us that beautiful, bright, acidic, limey flavor that everybody tends to relate to tequila. So the benefit of this, margarita. So the benefit of this cocktail really is about three ingredients, all in balance, coming together to create something very nice, bright, and fresh. Milagro, again, prides itself on being fresh. We craft every part of our process. We grow our own agaves. We slow roast them to maximize flavor. We're highly awarded, so our efforts have not gone unnoticed, which is phenomenal. And now I'm going to jump into Milagro's freshest margarita. Again, three ingredient cocktail, what I like to call a pantry margarita, if you have all three ingredients in hand. And who doesn't have tequila already in hand, right? All you need after that is agave and fresh lime. There you go. Belinda's got hers ready. All right, so let's go with this now. I will say that proportions are important here because you want to keep it in balance. So don't focus so much on, my proportions. Just trust in that all of these will come together to form a really well-balanced margarita. So first and foremost, Milagro Silver, 100% blue agave, estate grown, Highland, Jalisco. We have a lot of fruital, beautiful citric notes happening here. So as many of you guys mentioned, when it comes to fresh, I'm with Megan. When it comes to fresh, I think of citrus. I think of bright flavors, aromatic flavors, right? That really give you that sort of like fresh, clean vibe. So that's what Milagro entails in a bottle. So we're going to go with 2 parts of this. If you don't have a jigger, by all means, use any vessel you want, as long as you keep in proportion to the measurements I'm going to share with you. So let's 2 parts there, go right into our shaking tin. Then I wanted to do this fresh because, again, I can't mention this enough. We are very lucky. Mother Nature has been very kind to us. On average, we get anywhere between 3/4 to an ounce, maybe an ounce and a quarter, an ounce and a half of fresh lime juice in every lime. So as you can see here, 2 halves came out exactly to 1 part, which is exactly what we need. 2 parts. Milagro, now 1 part fresh pressed lime juice. You saw me do it here live first, along with everyone else. And then 3/4 of an ounce or 3/4 parts agave nectar. Agave nectar is also derived from the agave plant, not necessarily always the blue agave plant. However, in this case, I do have a blue agave.
Jaime, I have a question.
Yes, by all means.
Whenever I pour the agave into the jigger, it sort of gets stuck and I feel like some gets left over. Is there a trick to that, or do you just kind of?
Yeah, so sometimes what I do is I leave a little bit of the fresh lime juice on the side and I put it in and I do the agave nectar in the middle just so you can wash it out. You touched on something that's very important. I will say some folks sometimes dilute their agave nectar equal parts. I don't recommend it in this case because we're going to get a lot of water brought in through shaking, right? I mentioned this when we were in the closed group earlier, that cocktail making really is part science, part art. And what I mean by that is, for example, water, ice. Everybody's going to assume, of course you need ice. Who likes a warm margarita? That's a given. I know I don't. However, it's also imperative to note that ice is important because ice is what's going to bring down the temperature of this drink, but it's also going to add water. 7 to 10 second shake is going to give us about 30% water, and we want that. So ice your thing all the way down. I'm going to finish this up, and we're going to shake together. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Give it about a 7 to 10 second shake. You notice it's nice and frosty, and that is what you want, right? The colder it gets, the frostier it gets. So now we brought this down to temperature. Nice, delectable, refreshing temperature. Get your iced rocks glass. Mine's ready to go. Just a little bit of water, I'll dump that out. You'll see that I garnish mine with just freshly grated sea salt. I want that little bit of pop, that little bit of zing. It's gonna really open it up on the palate. And again, 2 parts Milagro, 1 part fresh lime juice, 3/4 part agave nectar. Pour that into your glass. You'll notice it's nice, bright, golden color. You don't get none of that neon green that we're sometimes used to in certain restaurants. Yeah, that's beautiful. Your glass is particularly frosty, Belinda. That's amazing. Last but not least, I take a lime, just give it a freshly cut lime wheel, and there you have it. Saludcita, cheers.
Jaime, this is delicious. I don't think I've ever made a margarita without the orange before. I didn't know that was allowed.
Fair enough. And as I mentioned, you know, to the smaller group before and now to the broader group, this is what's classified or known as a modern classic, right? We're understanding and we're recognizing that the traditional margarita recipe, which is comprised of lime juice, you know, your triple sec, if you will, or your orange liqueur, better put, and your tequila, of course, is in fact recognized as the classic. In this case, we're just doing a nice little riff, and I think it just works really well. It really allows and it gives a platform, a stage for that tequila to shine, right? The beautiful thing about tequila, as Megan mentioned earlier, what you can learn from it, you can ask me anything you want, but what I would say about tequila, it's a lot like wine. Someone on the group is drinking wine, for example, and wine is very terroir driven. It speaks to where it comes from, and tequila really isn't much different. It speaks to where it comes from. So when you look at a wall of 300 tequilas, it's not a matter of, oh, look, bartender, please educate me which one is best. It really is about where do they come from? What am I looking for in turn from a tequila? What is this tequila offering me? Is it more minerality? Is it more citrus? Is it fresher? Does it have more of that complexity, right? All of these things speak to where the agave comes from, and then of course the process that was used in order to convert it from a plant to a liquid, right? Because there's nothing, what's I think most impressive and beautiful about tequila is that you're literally drinking a plant, right? This plant, this succulent is closer related to an asparagus. It's closer related to asparagus than it is an aloe, even though it looks more like an aloe, right? So just to give you an idea of the complexities and the interesting thing about these plants, there's over 100 plus, 120, 150. We don't know exactly because of how the genus breaks up, but we know that this plant, you know, predominantly grows in Mexico, northern parts of South America, southern parts of the US. And so it's a very prolific and a very beautiful plant. And it's amazing that it's got all these great attributes and that we can drink it. So when you go to approach your tequila bar, really think about all the beautiful expressions that are on that back bar and not just go for what's smoothest, because smoothest doesn't always mean flavor, right?
Wait, I'm looking at Karen's margarita. Karen, that looks so gorgeous.
My dog is barking in the background.
That's
sorry.
okay.
But yes, I put it in a martini glass.
Beautiful. You did it up.
I did it up.
Nice. In every sense of the word. So this next cocktail is a riff. It's based on the freshest margarita. And what I wanted to do here is I wanted to showcase to folks just how really easy it is to take the same, you know, foundation, the same format, if you will, the same skeleton for this recipe, and just incorporate things that are seasonal or fresh or local to you. In this case, I wanted to take it completely in a different direction. We went from very bright, very citric, very fruity, Now we're gonna go to more savory. I'm Mexican. That is one of my most favorite taste profiles, right? I love savory. I love savoriness, a little bit of spice, a little bit of depth, that umami, those types of things. I absolutely love. Mark says he loves it as well. Yeah, so I wanted to take that in this. I wanted to take this in that direction, and it's really super simple. And again, just to reiterate what Belinda said and reiterate what Megan said, it really is about fresh here. So as much as you want to, maybe steer a little bit away from the fresh lime juice, I advise you not to, because it's going to be it's going to make every bit of difference in this cocktail. So again, we're going to take our our shaking tin, and mind you, you don't have one of these in a pinch. I've done this with a protein shake bottle, whatever you have, just because I understand that everybody. All right, Belinda's already got her. Is that going to be your muddling device? Yeah. Fair enough, right? You beat me to the hacks. All right, so that's your muddling device. Because I tell people, do not be afraid of cocktails. If you don't have this on hand, it's all good. You can make, what's important is that you have glass, ice, and the liquid in the end, right? So how you get there is really subjective. Any chef will tell you that. All right, so here's our shaker. We're gonna start with cucumber. Now, I use English cucumbers. However, a traditional conventional cucumber works as well. We're gonna do about four little coins or 4 little bits here. I see Victoria's got hers ready to go. All right, so 4 in there. Cilantro, we get it. Some of you love your avocado, your guacamole with cilantro. Some of you do not. I personally am an advocate for cilantro. That's what's going to make this beautiful and savory, and hopefully you guys like it as well. I'm going to go.
I love cilantro. Everyone else is crazy, Jaime. Cilantro is delicious.
I agree. I think other things you can cilantro is not one of them. All right, so I'm going to do a very big pinch because I like that green. We talked about freshness, right? This is another type of fresh, right? When you smell this, there's no denying cilantro. Cilantro combined with lime, all these things are really going to meld well together. Think of guacamole. Jalapenos. 2 jalapeno coins in this case. However, I'm going to tell you a little secret. Sometimes people ask me, well, Jaime, like the recipe says this is how you made it, but why you well, it's all about having alternatives, right? Jalapenos.
Nice alternatives here.
Yeah, and I don't know what people think about jalapenos, but personally, I can tell you that over the years, they've gotten less and less heat. And a lot of it has to do with the way they're being, the propagation of them, right? Or how they're being developed and how they're being mass produced and the whole thing. But what we find is that Serrano's, another very popular Mexican chile, has a little bit of a sharper heat, and nowadays consistently is more heat driven than the jalapeno is. So I encourage you, if you like extra heat, do it with the jalapeno and swap your jalapeno out for a serrano because you'll almost always get a sharper heat from it. In this case, I just put 2 jalapenos.
That's so interesting, Jaime, because we spotlit Margaret, who's a chef. She has a food and wine best new restaurant called Fatu. So she deals with a lot of spices and probably a lot of chiles and things like that. So I thought it was interesting that you shared. Yeah.
Margaret, do you agree with that? Do you agree with that comment?
Absolutely. I'm using what I have in the refrigerator, which is like a Thai chili.
I love, and Thai chili is great. It's going to give you that little sharp heat. Yeah, and that's the other thing, right? Heat is different.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. So think about this. What we want here is we want that introduction of freshness coming through with that savoriness from the cilantro, and then sort of capped off by that little sharp heat. So we're going to take our muddlers, whatever they may be, right? We're going to extract those beautiful oils from the ingredients here. These are what we call modifiers, right? This is what's going to flavor our
Go team, go.
We're muddling. We're muddling.
All right. So
how long do you have to muddle for, Jaime?
Just enough to break through the cucumber, which is pretty soft, right? The cilantro, which will come, you'll extract the beautiful oils from the cilantro just by shaking. And then the jalapeno as well, right? But all you want is just give it a little bit of breakdown, and the rest of it will be carried through once we give it a nice hard shape. All right, so given that this is the same platform as before, and as I mentioned before, for those of you that I know you're going to share my Instagram, but if you guys go onto Milagro as well, you'll see all the cocktails that I've created for the brand, and you'll notice there's a lot of similarities to this one because we did a whole program. I did a whole campaign where we talked about the fresh margarita, and then if you wanted to go savory, if you wanted to go tropical, if you wanted to elongate it with ginger beer or a tonic or flavored soda, we did all of that for you. So whether it's cucumber and mint, whether it's basil and pineapple, whatever it is, it's using the same format, just swapping out maybe the ingredients you're using in terms of the fruits and veggies. I personally love herbs, so you see a lot of herbs in these cocktails. That's by design. a personal obsession of mine. And then just really, if Milagro Silver isn't what I'm recommending there's a reason for that, right? I might be recommending Milagro Reposado, which spends 2 to 4 months in contact with oak for more of that spicy caramelized note that we want to interject.
Any suggestions for transitioning these drinks into the fall?
Yeah, that's just it. So again, like instead of silver, I start doing these and I start doing classic riffs on you name it, right? Whether it's a Manhattan, whether it's an old fashioned. The truth is tequila works phenomenally well in terms of classic recipes. But then if we talk about still your flavorful, fruity sort of, I switched over to softer citruses like Meyer lemon. I'll go with a bitters, right? I'll elongate it with some sort of tonic or something to dry it out more. I personally love dry oaky cocktails. So it just really depends, right? But I cover the whole gamut on our Milagro Instagram, obviously our website, as well as I share some of these things on my personal. So yeah, we got you covered. And that's the beauty of it, right? We oftentimes assume or rather sort of relate tequila to summer, but the truth is it's drank all year round. We do get a little spike in summer, but funny enough, it's consistently selling. It's not like whiskey, right? Which most people leave for the winter. Tequila is something that's sort of appreciated all summer. Beautiful. All right, so I'm gonna stop chatting now and I'm gonna quickly say, we're gonna do the same thing as before, 2 parts silver. I'm gonna go with 3/4 part agave nectar first this time to address Belinda's challenge as well as mine, which is to get that little bit of agave, right, from inside the jigger. So, and as I mentioned earlier, Belinda, go for it. I'm not quite there yet, but go for it.
I like it.
All right, if you give me 1 second, I'll be right with you.
Cindy's been over here muddling these cucumbers and jalapenos like crazy. I'm so excited. It's gonna taste so like herbaceous.
So good, so fresh.
Right, and this is one of those things where I can give you 5 million versions of what you can do, but really, it's really about just going and taking the fresh ingredients to you. All right, Belinda, Megan, I am ready. Let's do it.
I've got the team over here putting in work.
All right, again, beautiful, nice, frosty. That's what you want.
It smells so
I'm gonna double strain.
Double strain? Wait, what does that mean?
All right. So while we're double straining, we're going to use a little fine mesh strainer. And the idea here is I want the color. I want all the beautiful chlorophyll. I want all the great things that we got from the cilantro. You're going to notice this cocktail is a little bit green. Funny enough, right? You've been talking about green and fresh and how that relates. And so when we say double, it's using both your hawthorn and this at the same time. So if you watch me, this is what we're going to do. And that just catches all of the little cilantro bits.
Wow, we just learned like a really good technique there. Nobody has double strained on Virtual Boozy Brunch yet.
Well, there you go. Leave it to me. So there you have it. I did a nice little cross section of the cucumber. I don't put salt on this one. I don't think it needs it. I think that savoriness is right and perfect. You know, it's funny because whenever we introduce salt to margarita, we get that it's technically a 4th ingredient. It's garnish, and most people will look at it or think of it as, oh, well, no, that's just there for, you know, beautifying the cocktail. I don't need it. But the truth is, there's something about salt and the salinity and how it works on the palate, and any chef will tell you that. So the combination, the introduction of salt onto the palate in conjunction with all those beautiful citrus notes really opens up the cocktail. So it makes it pop in the mouth. So this one I don't think needs it, but here you go. Saludcita, here are to Sundays inside, especially in the winter.
I've always loved a spicy margarita, but with that cilantro in there, this is nice.
It's vegetal, it's green, it's still bright and refreshing, but it's got more substance to it, right? And it's got, to your point, a little bit of sweet heat, you know, and that savoriness sort of sets it apart. Yeah. I say, you know, I do it for modification and really for just being moderate in terms of like, or just not being too crazy with cilantro. I personally love it. So if you want to do 2 pinches, 3 pinches, I say go after it. I don't think you can go wrong. Death by cilantro.
You're so extraordinary. That was so fun. I think that's one of our best cocktail segments so far. So thank you for bringing your energy and your knowledge and everything to us. And I think that now that we all have a drink, and I've finished.
So nice.
I finished so far, Megan. I don't know where your gang is at. Double tequila. Woo! We're going to move on.
Thank you for having me.
Cheers. Thank you.
I think this is my happy place.
So that's Jaime's Instagram. So please follow along, and you can certainly DM him if you need more tequila and tequila Milagro love. But now we've got two great chefs waiting in their beautiful professional kitchen. And I'm so excited to introduce again to Virtual Boozy Brunch, Carrie Levins. She is our only three-peat. We used to work together in New York, and she's an epic sommelier and wine director, and her very talented and extraordinary cooking companion today, Chef Jared. And we put information about their restaurant all the way at the top of the chat, so you should definitely check it out if you're in Syracuse, because they are operating, and you should definitely go visit, because I understand that there is an epic wine program there. So that's very exciting. All right, Carrie, I'm ready to roast vegetables with you and get some tacos together.
So awesome, me too. Those cocktails looked so good. I couldn't make one because, you know, today at the restaurant, we've been working all week in the restaurant, and we're closed today and tomorrow. So that means you can't have any open wines over the weekend. So we had to drink them last night. So no more open wines in the restaurant for us. So we had to skip the tequila today. However, I was very inspired by Jaime and Milagro, which is why I wanted to do these tacos for everyone. Also, they're my favorite thing to eat for breakfast. And also because everyone's making margaritas, you could do double duty with the ingredients that you got for your cocktails, and then also have a great pairing for your breakfast. So I have two cameras here. And I also have Chef Jared cooking in the kitchen. Last week I made the gazpacho, and I was like, haven't cooked in a commercial kitchen in a very long time, and I felt very out of my element. So we have the recipe that I wrote that's perfect for home cooks. However, Jared has kind of leveled up this recipe a little bit, and I wanted to show, because I know a lot of us are in colder climates, Chicago, especially upstate New York as well, that we're not really grilling out anymore, but we still have a lot of fresh vegetables, and you can still bring a lot of flavor into your kitchen and still kind of cook over an open flame, even though you're not outside grilling anymore. So I have a camera, and this time, since we're not in my kitchen, we're in Jared's kitchen, he's going to be cooking, and actually there's nothing more delicious than having someone make breakfast for you.
Jared, I also like this scenario. It's like Jared's your sous chef. Ha-ha.
Yeah, so I've got a little camera so I can show you all the details that are happening. So, of course, can everybody hear me okay? Because we have a commercial hood on that can be a little loud. Okay.
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, so of course, a lot of the same ingredients with the lime that you used, cilantro, of course, jalapeno. My store somehow didn't have, this went to unmute. My store didn't have poblano, so we have a little bit of red pepper, jalapeno. We have these beautiful little petite French breakfast radishes and of course eggs, and then keeping it fresh, some queso fresco, a young fresh cheese. And the technique that I really wanted to show everyone, and definitely the difference between cooking at home and cooking in a commercial kitchen is, you can see these burners are like twice the size.
Hey, Carrie, when you turned away from your computer, it got a little harder to hear you.
So basically what I'm showing you is that a burner in a commercial kitchen has like 10 of gas coming to it, and also they're twice as big. So there's a lot of power, and we put a little kind of grate over one. But if at home, to just put your flame on high and then put your corn and pepper to start blistering the skin and getting a little bit charred, you probably don't need a grate. You could just do it right on your the grate on the pilot light. We're grilling a little bit of the onion too to kind of get that flavor in. If you have an electric stove, you can just get either a grill pan or a cast iron pan, just really scorching hot, so you start to blister the skin on your peppers. And sometimes the skin isn't always that digestible, and it just kind of leaves all the flavor and not the skin. So there's our jalapeno getting pretty blistered.
Carrie or chef, if we're doing this in cast iron, do you have to add any oil, or can I just put all the vegetables on?
No, just super hot. You just want that really hot metal right against the corn or the pepper. So the other thing I wanted to show you with this recipe is that with the corn tortilla, you can also just kind of warm them up. You can stir them a little bit over as well. Yeah, Mark Cheese got it going with this with his corn tortillas in the pan, and that just makes them more flavorful, more malleable, and then of course with the fresh theme, you've got to eat tacos when they're hot and fresh and ready. We also have a little bit of zucchini. And I wanted to use the corn because it's still kind of height of corn season up here in upstate New York. So while we have those going, we can start to toast some corn tortillas.
Carrie, Farhana has a question. She wants to know, what do you call that grate? Is it like just like a cooling rack type scenario, or is that something very specific?
No, it's not specific. Yeah, it's like the cooling rack. Any metal grate that can take direct heat, if you want to use that on top of your open flame, is totally fine. Just, you know, something that's not going to melt. Let's do that.
I see a fancy fried egg happening in Victoria Kent's kitchen. She's changing up the paradigm here. Oh, now it's being scrambled.
That waxy crayon steel walnut, and it sticks with you because the texture has gone.
Lisa, it looks like there's a question from Karen about jelly bean.
Yeah. So I always have questions.
Let's ask it. Karen, what do you want to know about the jelly bean? We all want to know, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, this has been so informative. I've really learned a lot, but what am I doing with this jelly bean?
So this is your incentive for paying attention to make it all the way. Oh, I'm kidding. It's not. But this is for, should we do the jelly bean trick? So this is a fun experiment. Usually I'll do this at the beginning, but it's a cool way to kind of just remind us how our sense of taste works along in partnership with our sense of smell. So if you have a jelly bean, really you can do this with anything. You could do it with a piece of the jalapeno if you wanted. That would totally work. But what we're gonna do is you're gonna eat the jelly bean, but you're gonna hold your nose first. So you're gonna hold your nose, pop the jelly bean in your mouth and chew, but you're gonna keep holding your nose. And so while you're chewing and holding your nose, you're trying to figure out what flavor the jelly bean is and kind of thinking about what you're perceiving. Then you'll let go of your nose and the flavor should change significantly. So we'll give you a minute to kind of go ahead. Anybody brave enough to do it with a jalapeno? Maybe not. So go ahead and release your nose. And it changes pretty significantally. So it's just
that is wild.
Yeah, Karen, it's amazing. Everyone's unmuted. Unmute yourself. Do it. Yeah, no.
Oh my goodness.
Sense of smell.
It's a reminder that of like how interconnected our sense of smell is to our sense of taste. Because like when we're holding our nose, we've removed our sense of smell. So all you can taste is like the sweetness. And then as soon as you bring the aromas back into the picture by releasing your nose, it's amazing. You get that huge burst, and it's like 90% of what we're calling flavors is aromas that we're tasting kind of in the back of our palate, right? So it's a good reminder just that we're doing both of those. And I use it for olive oil just because you can learn so much just from smelling. And then when we taste it, we're learning even more. So, and it's kind of a cool trick.
I think also, Lisa, you chose the different samples so well that it's so clear, you know, what you're talking about and what quality is, you know, the two on the left and where the problems are. Because I probably would have tasted the two on the right, the top right and bottom right, and been like, oh, that's olive oil. But now
that's what's so crazy is that's what we're familiar with, you know? So that's why I think it's so important. And with anything, you need context and you need to kind of chat about what you're tasting. So I think this kind of roundtable is so important. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, harsh recognition that, you know, what you're tasting that's bad is similar to what we're used to, but that's all we've had traditionally in the US, which is why the industry in California is fairly new. The trees were there, brought with the Spanish missionaries, but like what Cordo's doing with like a vineyard style way of farming and harvesting is brand new. And so it's kind of a revolution because it's a way that we can finally figure out a way to produce more of these fall harvest fresh olive oils, but more efficiently. So it's super exciting because it means more of this fresh olive oil available to Americans that's coming produced domestically, so we can begin to tell the difference, because we've just been flooded with this poor quality oil, which is just not the same thing.
Lisa, can you also tell us, so now that you've changed my olive oil life, Tom Macy changed my gin and tonic life with putting a lemon in it instead of a lime, and then Jaime just changed my margarita drinking life because I'm no longer going to put Grand Marnier. I think Corto and you are going to change my olive oil life because now we're going to buy it in boxes, right?
Exactly right. And so Corto, we work primarily with chefs and restaurants. And so we've just kind of recently expanded a little bit available to just general consumers, which you can get on our website. So this big box is normally intended for the kitchens. So it's a 10 liter. You're welcome to purchase the large one for use at home, but it's a lot of oil. But we have a 3 liter version of this, which is awesome. That's what I have in my cupboard. And then I will just, you know, put it straight into the pan, or use just like a smaller vessel and something that's light protected, and just, you know, use what you are going to go through and then change that vessel frequently. So you're
and because it's solid, the light can't get through. So what's the shelf life then of one of those boxes? Can you?
One of these boxes, so honestly, it's pretty much the lifetime of an oil. Like an oil, once it's made, you have like 18 to 24 months.
Oh.
In the box, it's so well protected. You're not getting light, air, or heat. I mean, the cellar, the tanks are, you know, premier. This is the next best thing, which is basically the same idea as the cellar. There's no light. Cardboard's actually a great insulator, so it can help with just kind of small swings in temperature. And then you take what you need, but there's no oxygen. So really, in the box, it would last that lifetime of the oil of like the 18 to 24 months. So you can have it, you can keep it in a cool, dark place, and then just take out what you need and kind of work through it.
That's totally a reasonable amount for a person. I mean, in 18 months, I probably buy several bottles of olive oil for roasting vegetables and stuff. So nice. That's awesome.
Yeah, and I mean, a 3 liter, like I'll go through it in like 3 months pretty much. It's amazing because I use it for everything. You certainly can heat olive oil. That's sort of a misnomer that you shouldn't.
Yeah.
You definitely can, right? There's just reasons that some people choose not to, but yeah.
I love it.
So for this segment, I did a lot of research on olive oils and didn't realize that there was a lot of fraud that goes on with olive oil. And I even read an article about, you know, the Italian mafia, like a whole bust in Brooklyn, New York, of, you know, confiscating $700,000 worth of street valued illegal olive oil. But what I didn't know is that there are certifications that should be on an olive oil label. And yesterday, you know, I was making pesto for dinner and I ran out of olive oil, so I had to go to the store. And I was shocked that like there was only 2 bottles on the shelf at my local bodega that had actually the certifications on them, which I had no idea.
Right. Well, and that's like, eventually we want to get to a point where you don't need to look for a certification, that you can trust what's on the label. But the reality is that there's no enforcement behind the extra virgin, which is meant to mean that it's the highest grade. So how sort of the industry set up right now is that producers can opt in to, like, you know, they're saying they want to have their oil tested and verified, and then that's what gives it a certification. So there's lots of different bodies that do it, like the California Olive Oil Council, who I used to work with. That's basically a partnership with like the entire industry in California, and they're kind of opting in to have that certification. But now, like, sort of the work that's been done, because it's a growing industry in California, there are mandatory standards. If an oil is being made in California, it does have to get tested. So that's kind of putting in place.
Can I interrupt you? So we have a question from Karen. Can you talk about this tasting notebook and how it works?
Yeah. So this notebook is a place where now you have a place to collect all of your tasting notes, but really it's just a place to kind of record the observations when you're tasting and comparing different olive oils. And if you open it up to any page, really there's just lots of categories, which are all things that we can think about to differentiate, which is a lot of what we talked about, which is, you know, the intensity, the aroma, the taste, the texture, balance, you know, is the fruitiness in balance with the pepper to kind of the complexity in the right way that we want, the finish, all of those things can tell us about an oil and also tell us about our preferences to kind of first determine if it's a fresh oil, so we have the best flavors, and then determine which flavors we have and how we might pair them in our food.
So for these, I have a question, which might be Karen's question. We'll see if I can name what she's thinking. So like in these, so you said color and hue doesn't necessarily speak to quality. That's just what that is. And then aroma intensity, like is a higher quality oil most powerful, or is that also?
Fairly. I mean, you definitely want an aroma. You want an aroma to be there of those green, grassy, fruity notes. The intensity is kind of subjective. It just depends kind of on the variety and on the blend. Like I've had some really delicate oils where it's more of a muted aroma, but it's super complex. So it just kind of depends what you're looking for.
Yeah, but for finish, like with wine, you definitely, a well-made wine has a longer finish. It doesn't just disappear. So in terms of quality versus duration of finish, a higher quality would have a longer finish. Is that accurate?
So for oil, the finish is a little bit different. It's more that the finish is the pepper, first and foremost, and that the texture is clean.
Versus other flavors that could be on a finish. Better.
Right? You shouldn't be left, because when an oil is oxidized, it finishes longer, but not in the best way.
So fascinating, right? I mean,
there's so much correlation with wine, but then there's also differences, right? Because wine, you can manipulate after it's made, you know, you can age it, you can do all these different things. Whereas like the oil, it's one shot, right? It doesn't get any better after that. You have to protect it and keep it fresh, right?
I'm now also judging all my friends when I got, not that I ever did that before, because I didn't, like when I went to their homes for dinner or whatever, and they put out an olive oil. Now I'm going to whip out my book and I'm going to be like,
let's see how meal. Yeah. Well, next step is you're going to have a bottle in your purse that you don't leave home.
Bring your own. BYO.
Yeah, Christina. It's like the people who bring the Tabasco in there.
Exactly. And like the little like tin of sea salt, you know, you've got to have the essentials.
That's so great. Libby asked a great question about when olive oil is served with bread. Would that change the flavor or the taste of the bread depending on what the olive oil is?
It can, definitely, if it's like a flavored oil, like say it's a rosemary focaccia, but it can in a good way. You know, you can kind of pair those flavors together. When we're tasting it, like in a formal setting or a blind tasting, we don't use bread just because it's harder to perceive the full flavor and aroma when you're tasting it on a piece of bread. It's more just sip it neat, you know, and taste it so you can taste it more fully. But yeah, you can, obviously it's not many people sit at home drinking their olive oil. So yeah, the bread is great. It's delicious. And I mean, a really good fresh loaf of bread and a great olive oil, there's nothing better. It's so
I've now sat at home twice drinking olive oil. So maybe it isn't.
You're getting to develop a habit here. I like that. Yeah.
It's supposed to be really good for avoiding hangovers, right? Because it's supposed to like coats the stomach so that you can
totally hold that,
and less alcohol will be absorbed through that process.
Vocalist. When I was in college and singing opera, like before a concert or anything, I was always told to take a shot of olive oil before I go out and sing.
Interesting.
To coat your throat
and protect your.
And it keeps it moist. So, because usually, like when your nerves kick in or if you're anxious, you just end up naturally with dry mouth. It just helps keep your throat coated so you can sing. Yeah. Huh. I have more questions on terminology. So like, because you kept mentioning, you know, extra virgin is like the best of the best, but what if it's like words like unrefined, unfiltered, cold pressed? A
lot of those are just marketing terms. I mean, they relate back to things that happen in the process, but the reality is that everything pretty much on that label is not held to any kind of criteria. So you can kind of put whatever you want. It's like natural on a label, right? What does that really mean, you know? So what those things are referring to, like cold press is talking about how like when you're making an olive oil, you harvest the fruit, you crush it, and then you just go through separation to separate the oil from the fruit pulp. You can add heat to that kind of crushed fruit and you can extract a higher yield of olive oil, but it degrades just like kind of when we're warming it to kind of smell those aromas, it releases those aromas prematurely and it can degrade the quality of the oil. So you make more, but it's a lower quality. So that's what like the cold pressed is referring to. But again, there's no verification to know if that's really the case. So those things are kind of largely, you know, to kind of help tell the story of the producer. But even extra virgin, since you know it's not guaranteed and it's not going under any testing unless there's like a certification, you really just have to taste it, right? So find like a retailer who's set up so that you can taste it, or who you trust and you can talk to. When traceability is the biggest thing, like finding an olive oil that's coming from one source, because they have more control over the process, find out how they make it, right? And then you're going to get it directly from that source and it's going to be fresher. So
Lisa, I feel as if, you know, there are a lot of food brands that are so protective over their food brands, which is clearly like very important. I'm surprised that there's not, you know, how there's Wines of Alsace, Wines of Loire, there's the CIVC, the Comité Interprofessionnel de Vente de Champagne. Like, is there an EVOO organization that employs a lot of lawyers that could go protect that brand and go attack all the people who try to violate the level of standards and stuff like that?
Good question. Well, one day there will be a feature film about olive oil because there is so much drama. There's somebody who, a friend of mine who's working at the California Olive Oil Council, which is more like at the hub of the wheel with all of this litigation, because there's lots and lots of kind of, you know, attempts to create mandatory standards, because right now we have standards in California that we want to eventually affect everything that's imported. But there's a ton of money in olive oil. Like the US is the second largest market for olive oil in the world. So, you know, like domestically, we still only produce like 5 to 6% of what's consumed. So there's huge powers and interests that are pushing back on these standards because, you know, they want to keep it how it is. So yes, there's this friend of mine, she worked in fashion for 20 years and she said there's more drama in olive oil and you would never believe it. So there's all kinds of things happening behind this.
But then you guys just got to like tuck in and protect the brand, right? Get all those EVO.
Really, like at the end of the day, we're just trying to put out the best, freshest olive oil that we can, you know, and that's why I even have a job, is because it's like you need to be able to tell the story and explain what we're doing and why we're doing, because we're not taking the cheap route. It's far more expensive, but you know, it makes such a difference when we're cooking and tasting, you know. So yeah, there's definitely lots happening, and hopefully it will change and one day we can trust what we're buying. But until then, you're now enlightened and you can taste it and know what you're getting.
Also, Alessa was when we were met first, like 30 weeks ago, she was like excited. Weren't you like a garlic ice cream or an olive oil ice cream? And I'm like, oh yeah, that's such a good idea.
Yeah, so I went to the Stinking Rose in San Francisco once, like a really long time ago, and they had this like garlic ice cream with some sort of, I don't know, spicy caramel sauce or whatever. But yeah, I recreated that when I went to culinary school.
That's so fun.
Olive oil in it too, or it was just the garlic? Yeah.
Yeah.
I lately discovered a brown butter ice cream, and I have to tell you, I have to really stay away from that because it's addictive.
I love savory
olive oil one. I wouldn't be able to live in it.
My favorite ice cream is an olive oil ice cream at
Salt and Straw.
No, it wasn't. Oh my gosh. But I'm gonna try it now. No, it was oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm forgetting Mario Batali's pizza restaurant in LA.
Osteria Mozza?
Mozza. Yeah. Thank you, Mozza.
Yeah, I bet that one's amazing. Yeah. Oh. I mean, that's Nancy Silverton too, so very fun. Well, Lisa's got a really good olive oil ice cream recipe. Can I share it with everyone, Lisa?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I mean, that's like integrating the olive oil into the ice cream. I mean, you can do an easy version and just get a really high quality vanilla ice cream. Even chocolate, I've tried it with. Pour the oil over the top and a little sprinkle of sea salt, and it is so good. I was skeptical the first time, but it's like the creamy richness, fattiness of the ice cream with like the grassy green notes of the oil are so good together. Yeah.
I love it. Alessa, you're so right. Ice cream, cakes, olive oil is such an ingredient for like, so good. Thank you, Lisa. That was amazing.
Yeah, thank you guys for the questions and the attention. I feel like I've been geeking out, but I appreciate that you guys do it with me.
There's just a bunch of people that love all that stuff. And I mean, it's just it's an ingredient that we all use all the time. And
that's the thing is like, it's kind of like, you know, you don't think about it. You kind of take it for granted, but you don't realize that if it's not the best flavors, it is adding flavors to your food, but not the ones that you want.
Mm-hmm. Well, cheers.
Yeah, cheers to that.
Sharing the knowledge and all the magic. It's so fun.
Well, thank you so much for hosting this and for having me and everyone for joining. This was fun.
Well, thanks for being open to, you know, as we said earlier, Lisa's done this 200 times and generally for very small groups or just like one person, one-on-one. And I was like, you know, we could get together.
Yeah, I like the group dynamic because the questions is where it, you know, comes to life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, very cool. Well, cheers, everyone. That was super fun brunch. I know some people have to run, so thanks for staying a little extra. Christina and Nika and Victoria, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Mark, I'll also see you at some point tomorrow, if not later. Megan, I'm ready for our next dinner party whenever we want to do that. Well done on the co-hosting. Kruti, it's good to see you. I'll see you next time we're back in Chicago.
Next dinner so I can pretend I'm there.
Yes. Thank you, Victoria, for getting on the scheduling and getting all this fun together for all of us every week. Livy, I always love to see you. I hope we see you for Wild next week. It's going to be good. Yay. Have a great
I'm about to go make some tacos. Dig in.
Yay.
Have a great week, everybody.